Greetings and welcome back to Videocasts. My name is Yitzchak Etshalom, and I'm delighted to be studying Haftarot with you on a weekly basis. This is a special edition of Haftarot. Normally, our weekly videocast, in which we look at the Haftara to be read that coming Shabbat and understand what its message is and see how it's related to the Kriyat HaTorah of that Shabbat. However, we're going to take a special look at the Haftara of the first day of Chag HaMatzot, which of course is coming up on Sunday. It will be difficult to relate it directly to the Kriya except for the broad context, but we'll take more at a look at the Haftara itself and understand what's going on. However, this is one of the two Haftarot that we have that comes from the book of Yehoshua. Sefer Yehoshua, which is a beautiful book which describes the conquest of the land, and for the first bulk of the book, which is really about the investiture of Yehoshua and his coming into the position of leadership, there are constant echoes of Moshe Rabbeinu. So, for instance, as we'll read in the Haftara, at a critical point, Yehoshua is told by a malach to take his shoes off because he's on holy ground. Consistently, Hashem tells Yehoshua, and the people tell Yehoshua, as long as you have God with you like he was with Moshe, we'll be loyal to you like we were to Moshe. And Hashem says to Yehoshua, as long as you abide by the laws that I taught Moshe and he taught you, then I will be with you. You have no reason to fear. And a phrase that repeats consistently in his charge to Yehoshua is the same phrase that Moshe used with Yehoshua throughout Sefer Dvarim, which is chazak ve'ematz, be strong and be courageous, be of strong heart, because you're going to lead the people, you're going to conquer the land, but of course, you've got to be strong and hold on to the Torah that Hashem taught me and that I taught you, says Moshe to Yehoshua. And you notice in the very first pasuk of Yehoshua, the distinction between them is that Moshe is called Eved Adonai. After Moshe, the servant of God, died, then Hashem spoke to Yehoshua binun misharet Moshe. Yehoshua is not even an Eved, he's a misharet, which is a servant, not a slave, and he's a servant of Moshe. So at the beginning of his independent career, he's not an Eved, and he doesn't have a direct relationship to Hashem. He's a servant to Moshe, who was the slave of Hashem. At the end of his life, after he dies, Yehoshua is called Eved Adonai. He finally comes into that position only after he is dead, which is, by the way, pretty much the case with Moshe Rabbeinu also, except for one passage in Bamidbar Yud Bet. And that's Yehoshua. Now, in the Nevi'im, we have several narratives about Korban Pesach. Korban Pesach, more than any other Korban, and the celebration of Pesach, not of Matzot, but of Pesach, is something that is core to our national identity, and therefore it always represents a new dedication. For instance, the only other time we ever celebrated Pesach before the one we're going to read about, since Mitzrayim, was 2 years later, a year later, when we constructed the Mishkan and we dedicated the Mishkan with the Korban Pesach. We didn't bring the Korban Pesach again for the next 39 years in the Midbar. But now we're going to bring the Pesach again, which we'll read about. There is a very famous Pesach that happens when Chizkiyahu tries to reunite the North and the South, and has the big Korban Pesach. Yoshiyahu has a very big Korban Pesach when he cleans up the Bamot. Ezra has a very big Korban Pesach when they come back and rebuild the Mikdash. He comes to the rebuilt Mikdash and makes it the Korban Pesach always symbolizes and always is there as a sort of a lightning rod for dedication, recommitment to the covenant, critical. And so here, where the people are just now coming to the land, they enter the land on the 10th day of Nisan. They come into the land and they need to prepare themselves to bring Korban Pesach now that they're in the land. So we come after chapter 2, which is sending the spies to Yericho, and chapter 3 and 4, which is crossing the Ardain, and they cross on the 10th. Here we come to chapter 5, and this is the Haftara. And the Haftara starts with Brit Milah, a mass Brit Milah, which Yehoshua is told to do on all the males. And the text gives us the reason, because nobody born in the desert over those 40 years had Brit Milah. It's too dangerous to do Brit Milah when you're on the road. You never know when you're going to move. And therefore, they didn't do Brit Milah. The Gemara says there was a northern wind that was blowing that made it dangerous. Also explanations why there was no Brit Milah done in the desert. So all of these men who were 40 years old or under needed Brit Milah, because you can't do Korban Pesach without Brit Milah, and you can't even do Korban Pesach if there's a member of your family, if you're a father, and one of your children doesn't have Brit Milah. And so therefore, the first thing that happens is the mass Brit Milah, and the first part of the Haftara describes that, and in Pasuk Tet, we're told that that Hashem, that they're at a place called Gilgal. It's a little bit north and east of Yericho, right near the Yarden. It's where they camped. And Hashem has a little play on words. Why is it Gilgal? Because Galoti et Chapat Mitzrayim Alechem. I've rolled away the shame of Egypt from you. And there's a lot of different explanations about what that wording means and how that relates to circumcision, but that's what they do. And what do they do afterwards? Vayasu eta Pesach. After they finish with Brit Milah and they rest up from that and heal, they do the Pesach. And this is commonly known in rabbinic literature as Pesach Gilgal. There's Pesach Mitzrayim that happened the first year, the year that we left, just before leaving. There's Pesach Bamidbar, the 1 year we did it in the desert. There's Pesach Gilgal, and that's right here. The famous Pesachim in history, Pesach Hizkiyahu, Pesach Yoshiyahu. This is Pesach Gilgal. And it says they did the Pesach on the 14th, right outside of Yericho, and they ate from the new fruit of the land because now Chadash became mutar, and that was the end of the man. And then we have this story, which I promised I'd show you. This story, Yehoshua is in Yericho. Now, the Rambam says that this story happens in a vision. Yehoshua is not in Yericho. Yericho is still an empty city, and not an empty city, but a closed-off city, as we'll see in the big pasuk here. But Yehoshua envisions himself in Yericho, either that or it's really happening and it's outside of Yericho. And he looks up and he sees a man with a sword drawn, and he says, "Are you with us or are you against us? Well, are you on our side or not against us?" And the man says, "No, I am an angel of Hashem, and I've come now." And Yehoshua falls on his face, and he says, "What do you want?" And he says, "Take your shoes off because you're standing on holy ground," which of course is there to buttress Yehoshua's feeling of confidence that he's like Moshe, because that was Moshe's first thing that God ever told him. Take your shoes off, you're on holy ground. And that, of course, sets up anticipation. Moshe was told that at the Sneh, which would later become the place of revelation, Har Sinai. Here, Yehoshua is being told that in Yericho, which is going to be the place of a great miracle, the first conquest in Eretz Yisrael, which will happen in the next parak. But the very last pasuk of the Haftara is the first pasuk in the next chapter, but it's really the end of this parasha, which reads, V'Yericho sogeret sugeret b'nei Yisrael. Yericho is sealed up. Ein yotzei ve'ein ba. Nobody's coming in, nobody's going out. The people in Yericho, as we read in chapter 2, are terrified. They are scared of Bnei Israel. They've heard about Kriyat Yamsuf. They've heard about the wars again of Sichon and Og, and how successful we were, and how Hashem is with us, and they are absolutely terrified. So the city is bolted up tight. Nobody can come in, nobody can leave, and that sets the stage for the conquest of Yericho, which of course famously happens after 6 days of circumnavigating the city, and then the walls come down and we conquer the city, and we'll leave that for a shiur and Sefer Yehoshua. Everybody should have a Chag Sameach.